David Gilbert, thank you so much for your time today. You wear a couple hats in the city of Cleveland here. When you first heard this exciting name announcement this morning, the Cleveland Guardians, what's your reaction?
Knowing a name change was coming certainly has made it easier. And I think the Indians, they've been in a tough spot. It's a name that evokes a lot of emotions for and against, and there is so much history tied to it. That said, I really am excited for what they chose. I think there is a real nod in that to Cleveland history. I think, those of us who are around Cleveland history and know some of the history, that name really does mean a lot. The logo certainly it has ties to that bridge, which is very important, that guardian, which has become a symbol of Cleveland. And I think they've also done a nice job with keeping the colors, keeping the script that does give it a historical tie. Those who did not want the Indians name to go away, I believe there probably isn't a name that would have been the same, and it is difficult to to set that history aside. But I think they did a great job, quite frankly.
Just with the nature of your business, and you've thought of it in terms of our city. You have branded our city in a certain way. What does brand and the image and identity that come along with that mean for a team and for a city?
It does mean a lot. I think, it means, pro sports teams are so critically important, not just for the dollars they bring in, but because they wear the city's name on their chest to a national and sometimes international audience. And that can't be taken lightly. It really means a lot. I think that and the names tend to really be tied to a community. If you're a sports fan and you hear Mariners or you hear Yankees or you hear Rangers, if you're a sports fan, right where those teams are. I think people will be. It'll take a little time getting used to any new name, but I think this is a name that certainly is unique and does have great historical ties back to Cleveland.
Yeah, and thinking of that, I know obviously there's conversations about long-term lease and all of those kinds of things going on now. Does it give us any peace of mind that they chose something that is so uniquely Cleveland?
I do. I don't think there's necessarily. I don't believe there's necessarily a tie to thinking, does that mean they're going to stay in Cleveland or not stay in Cleveland? I think we also all certainly hope and expect they will be in this town for a long, long time, for generations to come. But all that said, if we're on our way to a new lease, we have an extremely exciting young team. And it's not to say that, boy, isn't it great, there's a fresh start, so to speak, but there can be a lot of excitement for the years going forward with this name. And again, it will take some getting used to. So many of us grew up wearing Indians onesies and starting from that early, but it's the same ballpark. It'll be the same players next year. It still is Cleveland's MLB team, and I for one am going to embrace it just the same.
Now I know again, because you've been through this on the other side of things with your own branding studies. How do you encourage folks at home? How do you embrace this? How do you try it on for size and get used to just saying Cleveland Guardians?
I think it will just take a little time till it feels right coming off the tongue. And again, it probably will just take a little time. We're all used to wearing Indians gear. Now we'll have to get our Guardians gear. And but I do think over time, a good analogy might be, it was Jacobs Field for a long time, and it felt really odd when it became Progressive Field and it was no longer the Jake. But now I really think you hear very few people slip and say Jacobs Field. And so it's just a little bit of a matter of time, and people will go to the ballpark, they'll wear the gear, they'll see the team with, wearing that uniform. That uniform still will say Cleveland, will represent Cleveland, and all it'll take is a little bit of time.
And obviously, I know there's so many of us, like you said, we're homers. We've grown up with this name and these images. But is there something on the business side of things that could be said as a positive here? As you said, the Indians have been in a tough place. Could this name and the inclusivity and other things that are tied to it be a good thing in the long run for the city and for what the team is able to bring into the city?
Yeah, absolutely. I give the team a lot of credit for being proactive around this name change and not somehow being forced from the outside to do it, or shamed into doing something that does make sense. And I think they I give the team and the Dolan family a lot of credit for being out front, being proactive, going through a really long, thoughtful process, listening to the community as to what made sense, and came up with a name that really does have a lot of Cleveland history built in, as opposed to some somewhat generic name.